Today I'm going to show you the most complicated game of all time. Honestly, I'm nobody to analyze this game. Mikhail Tal has even written a book on this game. It was the year 1960 when Mikhail Botvinnik regained his title and the chess world became entranced by charismatic young Latvian named Mikhail Tal. Tal often sacrifices material in search of the initiative in chess. With such intuitive sacrifices, he created vast complications, and many masters found it impossible to solve all the problems he created over the board. And same goes on this game. Botvinnik was playing with white, and he started with c4 and then knight to f6 from the Tal. Knight to f3, so that's English opening, and it can transpose into any variation. G6 from the Tal, g3 from Botvinnik, bishop to g7 and bishop to g2. So now that's, and then castles from the Tal, and d4 and then d6. So that's basically King's Indian defense. Here knight to c3 was played, and now knight b to d7. On this position, c5 could have been played, and to see if white captures this or pushes the pawn, and then you can play. But here in this match, Mikhail Tal straightly play knight b to d7, and then castles for the white, and now e5, e4 from the white, and now c6. Here, Mikhail Botvinnik played h3, but what if you play here at this position, say d5? If you play d5, then a5 would come first, and then you play h3, and now knight to c5, and that would be a very nice square for the black. Of course, you cannot play b4 because that is why a5 was played earlier. Having said that, if I go back here at c6, bishop to e3 is also an option where, but here if you play bishop to e3, knight to g4 would come, and then if you go to bishop to g5, but then queen to b6 will come, and then that would be a very difficult for white. That is why Mikhail Botvinnik at this position first played h3, so you need to stop this knight coming on to g4. Now e3 is bishop e3 is possible.
But friends, instead of queen to b6, if you play e takes d4 and then knight takes d4, but then this will be an isolated pawn, and this you really do not want to see such things. So after queen to d6, d5 was played, and now c takes d5 was played. But I show you one sample line. Say for example, if at this position instead of playing d5, you play king to h2. Now e takes d4, and now knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and then you can offer queen takes d4, and now knight to g4 check, and then as soon as you move the king, say h takes g4, and now bishop takes g4. The material is equal, but the white pawn structure is completely cramped, and then I would say the black has an upper hand. That is why e5 was played, where c takes d5, c takes d5, and now knight to c5 was played, and bishop b4 is not possible because queen is here defending it, and that's a very important square for the knight, I would say. Here at this position, knight to e1, sorry, knight to e1 was played, but I would suggest it would be better if you play uh, rook to e1. You will added a defender of the pawn at e4, but anyways, knight to e1 was played. So idea is that knight is going on to d4, and then try to exchange this powerful knight. So after this, bishop to d7 from Mikhail Tal, and as I said earlier, knight to d3, where knight takes d3, queen takes d3, and now after a lot of thinking, Mikhail Tal played rook f to c8. So friends, although Mikhail Tal has spent a lot of time playing this move, say for example, if you do not play rook c to f8 and try to play knight to h5, but then uh, bishop to e3 was possible, but then queen takes b2 will come, and then when you play rook to b1, then queen has only option is only square left for queen is a3, and then you will lose the pawn at b7. So instead, or even if from this position you try to play going back queen to d8, queen e2, say for example you try to defend this, you're trying to attack onto this knight, say once this coming in, and then it captures, and then this knight will be undefended. So here at this position, say for example, so you play f5, then e takes f5, and then rook takes f5. Rook takes f5, of course you cannot capture it with the pawn, and now queen to c4, and oops, sorry, 1 minute. Queen to c4, and then say rook to c8, but now queen to b4, and then all of your pawns are hanging. So of course you don't want to do you don't want to go onto this line. Hence, from this position where a queen takes d3, Mikhail Tar played rook f to c8. Now rook to b1, because of course you would like to defend this. At this position, I would suggest that queen to e2 would be a better move, but rook to b1 was played, and now knight to h5, uh, and now bishop to e3 and queen to b4. At this position, queen e2 was played because a pawn to f5 is coming, uh, but Mikhail Tal played rook to c4. Oops, sorry. Rook to c4, attacking onto this, putting more pressure onto the pawn at e4. But if you play from this position, say if you play f5, and now e takes f5, and then bishop to f5, and now your rook is completely hanging, so you need to move to c1, and this could be an option. But here Mikhail Tal played rook to c4, and then rook f to c1 was played, where rook a to c8. So Mikhail Tal has doubled his rook onto the c file, and now king to h2, so improving the position of the king. And now f5 is coming, so very late been played, but it has been played. You have no other option than to capture the pawn at f5, and then now bishop takes f5, and now you have the rook at b1 is hanging, and you have to move the rook to a1. That really disturbs the tempo. But friends, from this position, what would you play as a black? As a white, g4 is also coming. What would you play? The move Mikhail Tal has played, I would say that's a move of the century. That's so Mikhail Tal move, and Mikhail Tal has played, yes, knight to f4. So now what you play at this position? Of course, there's an attack onto the queen. You already fork queen and the bishop. Say for example, if you try to capture with a bishop takes f4, but now e takes f4, and if you try to play g4, but then f3 would be very, very devastating. On the other hand, if you try to say play, oh, sorry, if you try to play queen to d2, but then knight will take g2 where king will take g2, and but then h5 would be very, very strong at this position. So friends, in the match, g takes f4 was played, but then e takes f4 where there's an attack onto the bishop. And what let's try to find out what options this bishop have. Yes, of course, bishop can go on to can capture the pawn at a7, but then queen to a5 will trap this bishop. On the other hand, if you try to play say for example, from this position, if you try to play a3 first and then queen to b3, and now you try to capture bishop to a7, bishop takes a7, but then bishop to e5 first, and f3 is coming, which will where we will you will lose the queen. So you have to play f3, but now b6 will also trap the bishop, as any of the rooks will capture it very, very easily. So here after so here bishop to d2 was played, and now queen takes b2. But now friends, from this position, if you try to play when it on this position, Mikhail Tal could have played bishop to e5, as I've explained earlier. So f3 would be uh, f3 is more or less forced. Now you can capture bishop take queen takes b2, and now what knight to d1 is can be played. So you an attack on the queen, where queen can go to d4, where c takes d4, capture, rook takes c4, and now rook to c1, where captures, and now queen takes d5, um, and now bishop to f1. So this could have been played, but here Mikhail Tal thought that although there will be a piece down against 2 3 pawns, but he says it's not viable again in viable on this match. So he played bishop to d2 first, and now bishop rook a to b1. And here on this position, although in the match rook a to b1 was played, but what if you don't play rook a to b1 and try to play from this position knight to d1? So you again attack onto this knight, onto this queen, and queen can go to e5. And then if you captures here, say queen takes e5, and now bishop takes e5, and it will be game over, because there's this rook at a1 is hanging. Although also f3 is also coming, that you will win the that will you will try that will win the bishop as well. So that's why knight to d1 was not really possible, and Mikhail Botvinnik played rook a to b1. And now here comes again Mikhail Tal is Mikhail Tal. What so he usually tried to create enough madness on the board, as I said earlier, and on this position he played f3. Uh, he already played a knight to f3 first, and now this f3 move, that's completely out of the blue. Say for example, here I show you one example before I tell you what happens in the game. Here if you capture this knight, say bishop takes f3, sorry, if you capture this pawn with bishop takes f3, now bishop will win this rook, and you can now rook takes b1, and now queen move to c2 very, very easily, and then you will be an exchange down. So From this position you cannot capture this, but instead you have no other option than to capture the queen. But here f also takes e2, and now rook to b3 was played because this knight was hanging. But here, say for example, if you try to move the knight, so knight to e2, but then bishop takes b2 was also coming. That is why knight rook to b3 was played, and Mikhail Tal played d4. Here at this position, if you do not play um, d4, if you do not play rook to d4, bishop to e5 check was also possible, where you can block it with f4. But now rook takes f c3 is possible, and if you play, say for example, rook takes c3, rook takes c3, uh, and then rook takes c3. But now uh, I can play bishop to f4 check, and if you try to capture it,
And now Mikhail Tal will have a queen. Or if you do, if you say for example on this position, if you say try to, and on this position I go one step back. If you try to capture this with bishop, but then bishop will take c3 and rook will take c3, you cannot capture it with the rook because I will have a queen. So all in all, there's enough madness onto the board. So after rook to d4, Mikhail Botvinnik thought that it's better to move the bishop to e1. But friends, what about if Mikhail Botvinnik tried to play bishop to e3 and try to attack onto this bishop? But then let me tell you what will happen even if you play this move. Knight will take, rook will take c3, so that you'll lose the knight. Where oops, 1 minute. Yeah, you cannot capture it with the c rook, because then you will the queen will be promoted. Or if you try to capture it with the b rook, but then rook to b d1 will be coming, and there'll be no stopping queen at e from on this position. So that's why bishop to e1 was the best move on this position. uh, but but Mikhail Tal now played bishop to e5 check, and the only place you can move the king is g1. As of course you can go to h1, but that would be really very difficult for to defend. But now bishop to f4 was played, where and now Mikhail Botvinnik thought, okay, it's enough is enough. He's giving his exchange, but then let's get rid of the pass pawn. So knight takes e2, where rook takes c1, and knight takes d4, and rook takes e1 check. So the only move you can play is f1. But now bishop to e4 was played and knight to e2. But on this position you cannot capture rook takes b7, because d3 will be coming, and that will be totally winning for the black. So after knight to e2, bishop to e5 was played, and now f4 attacking onto the bishop. So bishop moved to f6, and now rook takes b7, where bishop takes d5. There's an attack onto the rook, so rook move to c7, and now bishop takes a2, where rook takes a7, bishop to c4, rook to a8 check, king moves to f7, and now rook 8, now king to e6, uh, rook to a3, and now d5. So I don't think there is any stopping this pawn at d5. But anyways, king to d2 was played, king to f2 was played, and but now bishop to h4 check. So you're not allowing this king to go anywhere. So king goes back to g2, and now king to d6. Now knight to g3 was played, where bishop takes g3, and bishop takes c4, where d takes c4, and king takes g3, and now d5. And of course, now there is no stopping this. Of course, however, Botanic played rook to a7. Oops, sorry. Rook to a7. Tried to attack onto this, but now c3, rook to c7, and now king to d4, rook to d7 check. And now at this position, no matter what you do, you will not be able to stop this pawn from becoming a queen. And at this position, Mikhail Botanic has resigned the game. Friends, let me know how you like this madness. Do like this, because that will give me motivation. Subscribe to my channel for more of those videos. Let and Till then, take care. Bye bye.